If Jesus came to you today and said to you these words, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. If Jesus came to you today and said this to you, from a scale of 1 to 10, how much will you believe him? Type in the chat. Let me open my chat and see who's around. On what basis did you make that decision? Because he's God? Because he said so? Because you have seen it? Because you have read about it in the Bible? Or you may have other reasons. These same words were told to the disciples. These same words by Jesus to the disciples just before his arrest and crucifixion. The disciples were confused and troubled when they heard this, because up till then things were going well, except for those dreaded Jewish leaders. So Jesus told them about their persecution, that their persecutors and killers would be doing so in the name of God. And Jesus said that soon they will be scattered and he would be left alone. How was he going to overcome the world when up till then he would be left alone? And the religious leaders seem to have the upper hand in the whole scenario during those times. So if I were to ask John the same question that I asked you about this quote, he might give Jesus a ranking of 6, maybe. But after the resurrection, his ranking would have risen to 9, perhaps. But being left alone in the cave at Patmos, his score might have tumbled a bit. Seeing Christians dying painful deaths everywhere, seeing his beloved churches under threat and bad influence, he himself helpless and hopeless on that God-forsaken island. I have overcome the world? Really? If you have, why am I exiled, Jesus? Why are the Romans so powerful? Why are the Jewish leaders so hateful? Today, we might ask, Jesus, if you have overcome the world, why are there less than 30% people in this world who believe in you? Why are there more and more people turning to secularism, humanism, spiritualism, materialism? And why can't your name even be mentioned in schools except as a curse word? You see, in this day and age, we are very result-oriented. We don't only look for results, we look for instant results. If this brand doesn't work, change brands. If this spouse is not suitable, change spouse. If this leader is not winning elections, change party. If Christianity doesn't solve my problems, change religions or declare no religion at all, especially if the leader of that religion was a loser carpenter who couldn't save his own life, let alone talk about saving the lives of others. Some of you are thinking, how can I talk about Jesus this way? Well, today our lives are easy. We have religious freedom. We enjoy church even in the middle of a world crisis. We can still choose jobs and schools that do not hinder our rights to worship. But there will come a time when everything will be stripped away. There will come a time when we will be brainwashed to believe, yes, the Savior we believed so much in was only a loser carpenter. There will come a time when there will be mass indoctrination to accept a system of belief that looks good, feels good, but leaves a bitter taste of what is really truth. That is why we need to know about Revelation. That is why we need to try to understand it instead of just brushing aside and saying it's too complicated. That is why Jesus revealed it to his beloved apostle and disciple John. That's why we are studying it here today. That's why I try to make it as simple as possible. Because blessed are those who read it aloud. Blessed are those who hear it and obey the words that are in it. Today, you will be amazed. Today, you will marvel. And today, you may be shocked to learn about the final player in the whole cosmic conflict. The 7 seals have been opened as a declaration. The 7 trumpets have been sounded as a warning, and now no turning back. The 7 bowls of wrath are about to be poured out. And with this outpouring, the mystery of God is accomplished. His ultimate purpose of wiping out the enemy and rescuing his people, that will be completed. He is angry. He is very angry. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues in them. The wrath of God is complete. The counterfeit system set up by Satan, we studied that last week, and his team have caused havoc. They have caused people, many people, to turn away from God, to trust a system of deceit. They have not heeded the warning signs time and again. They have continued to woo the people with money, power, immorality, fear, until it didn't matter anymore if they had to sell their souls to the mark of the beast. So with the 7 bowls, God's wrath is poured out. Painful sores, sea turning to blood, drinking water turning to blood, as a reminder of the blood of the Christians that had been killed. Now these folks had to drink it. Then the scorching heat from the sun, then darkness, then the Euphrates River drying up to make way for the gathering of the forces for a showdown with God. This is Armageddon, the final battle. But even before the battle began, there was a great earthquake. Every island, every mountain gave way. Then heavy hailstones from heaven struck every people who continued to blaspheme God. No more mercy, no more grace. What happens now is, whose side are you on? The Holy Trinity or the Satanic Trinity? Of course, I'm on God's side, you say. Of course, I'm a Christian for so many years. Of course, I'm a faithful commandment keeper. Of course, I always help the poor. Of course, I treat everyone good. In chapter 12, if you remember, John was shown the woman clothed with the sun, with a crown of 12 stars. She was pursued by the dragon who tried to kill her and her child, but she hid in the wilderness. Then the dragon went to wage war with her children who kept the commandments of God and had the testimony of Jesus. All the traits of the woman point to God's church. In the Old Testament, the church is always likened to a bride. Now, in chapter 17, John is taken into vision again by one of the 7 bold angels to the wilderness. He's brought into the wilderness and he is shown this, another woman. I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the people of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. She has a golden cup full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. On her forehead, Babylon, the mother of harlots and the abomination of the earth. I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore the testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was astonished. John was astonished. Such negative and detailed description of this woman. Then the angel nudged him. Why are you astonished? Let me tell you the mystery of the woman. Now read on, and there will be some things that may puzzle you, puzzle me. Like in this chapter, the beast that she's sitting on, the 7-headed beast, is described as a beast that was, is not, and is to come in verse 8. And the 7 heads of the beast are 7 mountains she's sitting on, which are 7 kingdoms. Then there are 10 horns who are kings that have not received ruling authority yet. But out of all these puzzling verses, one thing is for certain, these 7 and 10, and they hand over their authority to the beast, the Antichrist, and they will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is the Lord of Lords, King of Kings, and those with whom he has called, chosen, and faithful. And the angel said to me, the waters that you see the prostitute seated on, these are people, multitudes, nations, and languages. It's not a local thing. Her influence, the prostitute, will reach the whole world, every people, multitude, nation, language. But unfortunately, the beast and the 10 horns, the 10 kingdoms you saw, will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin, leave her naked, they will eat her flesh, burn her with fire. And she is the great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. But she will be destroyed. Dark words we have just read: prostitution, fornication, adultery. In the Old Testament, these were words used often and were words used to describe Israel when they fell into idolatry. Read all the prophets and you will figure it out. When they fell into false worship and fell into idolatry and disobedience, this was how the prophets or God described them. Read Ezekiel, read Hosea, read Jeremiah, read especially Ezekiel 16 and 23. See, God uses strong words to rebuke not outsiders, but his own people, Israel in those days, and a corrupt religious system today and in days to come. This system will control the world and form intimate alliances with political powers of the world, politically, economically, and religiously. She will seem to control the kingdoms. She will hunt out the ones that refuse to bow to the beast, and she will kill them, even though they are Christians. But the kings will use her and then they will dump her. She's likened to the rebellious city, Babylon. And she has the blood of the Christians on her hands, just like Babylon before. So for John, his mind would probably point straight away to the corrupt Jewish leaders of his time who were politically intertwined with Roman rulers, even though they had no love for each other, the Jewish leaders and the Roman leaders, yet Jesus died in their hands. These Jewish leaders continued to exert their influence on the Roman leaders to persecute Christians in John's time. Many died in their hands. Fast forward to the medieval age, the Dark Ages. Protestant reformers. This was in a time when the church was coming out of Reformation. Protestant reformers. Critics within the Catholic Church equated the papacy, the Catholic Church leaders, they equated them with the prostitute woman because of its political maneuvering to gain earthly powers and dominion. Go back to history. This is history. And the Pope was named as the Antichrist in those days, leading the Catholic Church as a prostitute into apostasy. This was the mainstream interpretation during the rise of Protestantism. And up till today, some churches still use that interpretation. The time will come when this corrupt religious system or this conglomerate of corrupt religious system will be used by the unholy Trinity for the purpose of creating a counterfeit. So as Christians, as believers, fellow believers of Jesus Christ, the time will come when we have to make a decision. So at this moment, we need to be careful. We need to be aware that we are not in that kind of system unknowingly and be deceived. Just like God called the Israelites come out of Babylon in Jeremiah 51. By the way, if you go to Jeremiah 51, you will see exactly similar words that you will hear and read in this chapter 17 and 18. God is calling for his people to come out of her, my people. So when you say come out of her, my people, they were in the system. Now they're supposed to come out, lest you participate in her sins and receive her plagues. For her sins have piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Come out of her, my people, lest you participate, lest you be judged as well. This is all in Revelation, and as Christians, we need to read all this. Come out of her, my people. Come out from a church that merchandises for profit. So many today. Come out from a church that doesn't take care of the poor. Come out from a church that has false teachings. Come out from a church that teaches you that you are too weak to keep the commandments of God, that the commandments are not important anymore. Hence, you don't have to because we are too weak. Come out of those who do not pray to Jesus, but they pray to humans. Come out of those who teach the law, but have no mercy. Come out of her. God is calling you to come out and bring others out too. Do you trust Jesus enough to come out? Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those that keep the commandments and have the testimony of Jesus. This is the measuring line for those who will be faithful until the end. Those that keep the commandments of Jesus, all the commandments of Jesus, including the 10 commandments, all of that, plus more, and those that testify of Jesus and Jesus alone, not saints, not anybody else, Jesus and Jesus alone. How terrible, how awful. Wow. It's going to happen, the fall of Babylon in 1 hour. How terrible, how awful, this great and mighty city, Babylon. In just 1 hour, you have been punished. In just 1 hour. There's a lot of things mentioned about Babylon in the Old Testament, if you have read. Now, where did Babylon originate from? Way back in Genesis. Remember the Tower of Babel? That is Babylon. In the Tower of Babel, what did the people try to do? They tried to build a huge tower to reach God, to become like God. So exactly, all through the ages, Babylon has always been termed as the enemy of God. Babylon has always been termed as rebellion, as counterfeit, as those trying to become God. So who's Babylon today in our world? But Babylon has fallen. The apostate system has fallen. Then there's this word in 1820. Rejoice over her. Rejoice over her. Rejoice over her, you heavens. Rejoice, you people who have suffered. Rejoice, those people who have persecuted. Rejoice, apostles and prophets who have been killed and executed. Rejoice, for God has judged her. with the judgment he imposed on you. So you see, there's going to be punishment and judgment. It's not going to be everybody's going to be saved. Everybody is going to go to heaven. There will be judgment. And there's a drawing line at the end when the 7 bowls of wrath come out. But then for those of us who are on the side, the right side, you will say God is fair and just. You will say his commandments are great. You will say, hallelujah, my Jesus has won. See, God knows exactly what he's doing. He will fulfill his will according to his motivation. He will. God's purpose is very clear. You can argue with him. You can say that he's not fair. You can say, what about this? What about that? His purpose is very clear. And his motivation happens to be you and me, everyone that is in this room today, plus many, many more. You see, his purpose for doing all these things is not because he's evil or he's wicked. He just wants to clear the way for his sins. He wants to avenge us. Jesus will win the battle. Revelation tells you who is going to be the victor. Revelation tells you who is going to win the war. But Revelation also gives you the warning along the way what could happen to a faithful and dedicated Christian if he is or she is deceived. Revelation tells you all that. See, God has already got the plans. It's up to us today to look at what we've heard and read for the last 6 episodes and do something about it. Or, like the virgins, prepare our oil for that day and that time. Jesus will win the battle. But for the sake of his people, he will. He's doing it for you and me. Even though we are right smack in the middle, the conflict is actually to win back his church. Do you trust him enough to do it? Do you trust him enough to obey him?